But have you ever just sat back and just reflected, what I do makes a difference in this world?
I mean, that sounds like that would be such an exercise in my ego. So no, but I will enjoy the moments when someone tells me, hey, good job. And I'll tell you, Curtis, hasn't always been easy, right?
Welcome to the Vision to Reality podcast. I'm your host, Curtis L. Jenkins, and in each episode, I speak with industry experts, thought leaders, and innovators to break down the strategies, techniques, and methods that turn their ideas into reality. Whether your vision is to scale your business, build and lead a winning team, prepare for your next big career move, this podcast is for you. Let's get started and bring your vision to reality. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vision to Reality podcast, where we highlight accomplished leaders who have turned their personal and professional visions into reality. I'm your host, Curtis Jenkins, and today we have an incredible episode lined up. We're talking about building future-ready teams, what top CHROs look for in talent today, something that can make a huge impact on your business, career, and leadership approach. And to help us dive deep, I have a fantastic guest with me today, Angela Cheng-Cimini. Angela brings 30 years of both generalist and specialist human resource experience, having most recently served as the Chief Human Resources Officer for Harvard Business Publishing. She has shepherded businesses through startup, growth, and maturity with key responsibility for helping organizations identify and build the necessary organizational capabilities. In addition to having served on the Alumni Board of Directors for Cornell University, she's a member of CNBC's Workforce Executive Council, a body of chief human resource officers dedicated to advancing the practice of HR. She serves as an HR venture advisor for Semper Virens, an early-stage venture fund that invests in technology transforming healthcare, work, and financial wellness. And Angela volunteers as an advocate for the Asian American Pacific Islander community for several nonprofits. She is published in the Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and the trade publication Talent Development Magazine. Welcome, Angela. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Curtis. I look forward to our conversation.
So do I. And so you're such an accomplished leader. I mean, you got so much going on. I want to know, who is this person that's before us today that became this accomplished leader? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Oh, my backstory. Well, if we're going to go in the Wayback Machine, Curtis, my backstory is that I was a bit of an ugly duckling. I didn't quite fit the model minority myth mold, right? Which is that all Asians are good at science and math, and we play violin and we get straight A's. I wasn't quite that. I mean, I was a good student. My parents made sure of that, but I wasn't, always top of my class, and I was definitely socially awkward. And so I think it kind of makes sense for me to fall in to human resources, which is really about advocacy and making sure the organizations are really healthy places where people can be themselves so they can do their best work.
Awesome. Awesome. So the ugly duckling, the non-stereotypical Asian, how did that work for you navigating into where you are today? What are some of the challenges, direct challenges that you had to face? And then what did you do to overcome them?
It's a great question, Curtis. I think what I was or am a good student of is humans. I study humans, right? I observe, I watch, I look out for great role models. I try to be one myself. I learn from people who lead in ways that I think that are less than optimal. And so when you're used to coming from being marginalized or underrepresented in some way, to find your voice, you really have to, as you say, navigate all those challenges. And I knew that I wasn't meant to be pushed into a corner, that I had capacity and the passion to lead, but learning to do that meant overcoming my fear of speaking up for myself so that I could then start to speak up for other people. And that's where the work is really most gratifying. So surrounding myself with other strong people, lifting up people who don't maybe have the voice or the privilege to do that, is what I consider to be the most important work that I can do.
Okay. I really connected on the surrounded by strong people. And we talk about our network being our net worth. And as we talk about careers and moving up and how important it is for people to advocate for you. Who advocated for you?
It was probably my first vice president. So he was the boss of my boss, and he really took me under his wing, and he became my mentor, in some ways a friend. I mean, he was, quite a few years my senior, but he saw something in me that gave me confidence to believe in myself. And he was a white male, and I think he saw this kind of, awkward Asian girl coming out of college, but maybe had potential to be more, and his belief in me made all the difference. And so now, in the later stages of my career, I do as much as I can to pay it back by paying it forward.
And then talk to me about how you pay it back.
So I do a lot of volunteer work. In fact, just the other day, a woman asked to just pick my brain on something. She was looking for career advice. She wanted to do a pivot, wasn't quite sure what that looked like. And it turns out this woman has an astonishingly strong career. And she just needed to hear from someone else that she had value to add and that where she was perhaps wasn't playing to her greatest strengths. And so I'm happy to engage and indulge in those conversations. A lot of people just find me on LinkedIn or they hear me on a podcast. And then I'm willing to connect with folks, Curtis, as you know,
Yeah.
without much agenda, just to see how we can help each other, because I don't think there's enough of that in the world. And I'm happy to play a small part.
It was so great of you to agree so easily to join me on this show. So I thank you for that. And I like that about you, being willing to share your story, share your treasures and your talent and your time. So I appreciate that. I want to talk about something that I saw about you, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, making sense of the chaos, tariffs, and recessions. And it says here that you joined the leadership team as their first chief human resource officer. Tell me about what is that all about?
So I had been, 30 years at the grind, made my way to chief HR officer at Harvard Business Publishing, which is home of Harvard Business Review. And I was just kind of spent. I was very tired from the work, right? The pandemic really kicked all of us in HR into another gear. And I realized that I just needed to take a break. Our children are fully launched. My husband is basically retired and he's off doing fun stuff without me. And I thought, you know what, it's time for me to join him. He shouldn't be monopolizing all the fun. But I wasn't quite ready to step away from work. I still think that there's good that I could do there. And so I saw this job posting part-time, completely virtual. Hadn't heard of the Chronicle of Philanthropy, but I applied because I knew from a lifestyle perspective it was a really good fit. So I ended up getting the job, and I found out sort of after the fact, which is unusual for me because I usually do a lot more due diligence. Actually, it's a very, very cool place. And I joined right before the inauguration of this administration. And it turns out we are really well positioned to help all the people who are dedicated to philanthropy, to nonprofits, to making funds available, really, really well positioned to help these people get through what is kind of chaos right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a worst case scenario, Curtis, where the 501c3 tax advantages are stripped. And all of that is really thrown up into disarray. So we're a news media publishing organization. We also provide resources and analytics to people who make nonprofit work a calling for them.
Hmm.
And so I joined originally just as their head of HR, but I've gotten to work very closely with the CEO, Stacey Palmer. She's a remarkable woman, and we've grown to be really strong partners. And so now I'm the chief HR officer there, and I'm really, really proud of my affiliation.
Awesome. And are you having fun, as much fun as your husband?
You know what? It's a different kind of fun. This is definitely, sometimes it's work. It's good. It's meaningful work. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. And so what's the mission?
So the mission is we really want to equip people who are dedicated to the nonprofit sector. So there are leaders, people who work in nonprofits. There are the philanthropists, and then the people who make the grants, right? So we try to bring all of those constituencies together. We're not your first day news read, but we're your second or third. So we will analyze and interpret what it means. So for example, when the big beautiful bill was passed, actually 4th of July, we put out an article that said, this is what it means for you if you're in philanthropy. And then follow on, we'll give advice, we'll provide resources. We're often interviewing and have podcasts with really important voices in the nonprofit sector so that people can learn from one another.
Okay. So you took some time to break down the big, beautiful bill.
Mm.
And what I'd like to ask you is if you can break down the chaos around DE and I.
So I belong to a different organization that's also started by a journalist. And that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to highlight those organizations that continue to be dedicated to this work. So the chaos of DEI for me is people are making it into a political football. And it really shouldn't be about that. It should be about social good. And it's social good for everybody. I mean, that's what kills me, Curtis, about this is that this is not about giving people an advantage so that they can win over. It's about leveling the play field so that we're all better, right? This is about making the door wider. It's
Mm,
not about making the queue with a shortcut. It's about letting everybody in.
mm,
So people who make it into chaos have a political agenda and are completely missing the point of the social good that we're trying to do with that effort.
awesome. And so if I'm a job seeker, um, how do I handle my resume, the way that I present myself, especially as I would say, a minority candidate,
Mhm.
right? Who is often faced with and or see companies in the news who have, say, publicly taken away their DNI, words or programs and things like that. How do I approach this? And I'm asking you to put your sort of your HR hat on, right? How do I approach that if you're looking at the lens from a person coming from that space, wanting to present themselves the best way, but not falling into any bucket, so to speak, so that they get dismissed because of DE?
Well, as with most things, Curtis, nothing is, excuse the pun, black or white. I know lots of organizations who are calling it something else. People with titles that used to be DEI and they're now called, people in engagement or culture activation, right? But they're still doing the same work. And I get that. I don't pass any judgment on that. If like there is some gamesmanship here, but if all it takes is for me to you call me something different so that I can get back to my business, I'm good with that.
Yeah,
That's not a hill I need to die on. Now, if you
yeah,
tell me you're going to disband my team, you're going to cut my budget in half, you're not going to allow employee resource groups, that's a very different conversation. Right.
yeah.
So I think there's always some due diligence. For example, I spoke with an HR business partner at Target, and we know that
Hmm.
Target has been in the news. And I will tell you, he is just as committed to making his stores inclusive and equitable for the people that he supports as anybody else who's in a company, say Costco, who's openly saying, we're going to continue this work. So it's
Mm,
never as clear, right? I mean, I think sometimes the boots on the ground don't get the full message, or maybe they're continuing to fight the fight, even without resources, because they believe it's the right thing to do.
got
So
it.
if you're applying to an organization, then it's really incumbent upon you as a candidate, and that's the royal you as a candidate, to find out more about that organization. What truly is their stance? And if they get all squeamish when you ask the question, then I think you have the answer. But if they
Yeah,
give you a response that feels genuine, sincere, then it's worth another look. Now, in terms of how do we present ourselves so that we're attractive to them, that's that's a fight that I'll invest some time into. But Curtis,
mhm,
if I have to work overtime at this stage to make
right,
myself feel valuable, then I know what it's going to be like once I get on the inside. I don't want
yeah,
to be anybody's token hire, right?
right,
And I think that would be the same for you. So
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
okay with spending a little bit of time getting you to know me and introducing me, but after that, it should be on my merit. It should be on my value. And oh, by the way, I'm going to be judging you on the same.
Yeah, yeah, I like that, right? Because you will be. I know I would,
Mhm.
right? Who I work for and who I work with is as important as you wondering about me.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
yeah. So you're a speaker and you have several topics that you speak on. And I was intrigued by the topics and one in particular, because I don't know what this means, but hyper personalization of the employee experience. What is that? And what does it mean? And what are some of the key points that you share in that speech?
Yeah, I'm super passionate about this subject, so I'm really glad you asked me about it, Curtis. So Amazon, right? If
Yeah.
they have the subscribe or buy one item thing, but when you subscribe, they know when you're going to run out of your favorite shampoo.
Yeah.
Netflix will suggest to you, you like watching this kind of movie, so these might be of interest to you.
Yeah.
Spotify knows what my playlist looks like, and they say, hey, here's a new artist that's interesting to you. So the customer journey, the customer experience has really got us dialed in. They have all this information about how much we spend, what we spend it on, and and what we don't spend it on. And organizations from an employee journey perspective are slow to catch on. And for a long time, it was because we don't have the $1 billion budgets that Amazon or Google have or Netflix have to, parse all that out. But with consumer grade AI, there's no reason that an organization can't understand me as a profile and you as a profile to say, I know what's important to Curtis and I know what's important to Angela, and this is how I'm going to curate their journey in my organization so it meets their needs. And I talk about it in several different dimensions. One is learning and development. How you like to learn is going to be different than how I like to learn. Maybe I
Hmm.
just want to take a boot camp and I want to get it all done in 1 week. Maybe you, because you've got other obligations or because how you like to process information, maybe you like to do it asynchronously and you like to do it over 6 months. Everything shouldn't be cookie cut, right? It should be deeply personalized for how you like to learn. Equally, maybe cash pay isn't so important. Maybe I need a more robust benefits package, right? Because I've got pre-existing conditions, or maybe I know I'm going to have a baby. So I would like a trade-off, right? Don't just pay me the same as everybody else because maybe I value something else. My career ambitions, maybe I never want to be a manager. And in fact, recent studies show that a third of employees in the workforce today don't want to lead people. It's too much stress. It's too much work. They don't want to get into the politics of it. They just want to be an individual contributor, do their bit and go home. And so I don't want you to necessarily paint me and put me on a path where I have to become a manager so I can make more and continue to move forward. I just want to continue to grow technically. I want opportunities to share that information and get on some really cool projects. That looks different than someone who wants to be CEO one day. So that's just what hyper-personalization is deeply understanding where individuals are. And what I like to say is we all know what the golden rule is, right? Treat people the way you would like to be treated. But actually, the contemporary version of that is the platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated.
That is amazing. I never thought to personalize the same way the big companies do with our preferences, our careers. I really, really like that. I at some point in my career was at a crossroads, right? Project manager, or even before then, technical versus project manager. I chose project manager because it was more an opportunity for new, unique things, and then taking my personality and figuring I could spend more time with people. But then it was, can I be a project manager and a CEO? Because there's the folks that grow to be CEO in a company tend to be the finance folks, the sales folks, or the operations folks. And so I struggled with that for a while until I said, I can be a PMpreneur, right? I can create my own company. And that's how I created that barrier and said, okay, this is how far I can raise into an organization to be either a chief project officer or something like that. But I do find that I run into, as a hiring manager, as a leader, I have people who want more. But like you said, they don't want the politics, which comes along with growing. Sometimes the leadership that comes with doing, let's say, performance reports, because that's one thing that I just despise. I don't despise feedback. It's the process, right?
Process. Yeah. Nobody
And
likes yeah.
it's the process where also you kind of have to, put people in a band, and you have to make these comparisons, and most individuals won't make that comparison themselves, right? So they it's hyper personalized for them that they were just extraordinary because they worked really hard. But what triggered me to ask this question that's coming up is, how do I have this conversation with people, or how do we have this conversation with people in this talk where you can get more responsibility, right? You can learn new things, and it doesn't necessarily look like this path up, because most of the way that the organization is built is to move you up. So help me with that.
So, I mean, it definitely requires a bit of a philosophical shift on behalf of the organization. They have to be willing to make room, make space, and opportunities for people who want to move sort of laterally or horizontally versus just vertically. So, one of the other topics that I love to talk about is career development. And I've designed a
Mhm.
framework that I like to call sort of choose your own adventure. And it makes very clear the skills and expectations within a career family, but also makes transparent all those skills and expectations across any job family. So I have an example of a marketing director who really wanted to move over into HR because she wanted to dedicate herself to DEI work. She knew that she had some transferable skills from marketing to HR, but not all of them. So she came over as a marketing manager. And that was an easy transition because she understood that she wasn't ready to be an HR director. She needed to acquire new skills. And so that was a lateral move. She got a better opportunity. We didn't cut her pay. We just adjusted her title as befitting to her skills and abilities. And over time, she reclaimed the director title because she understood what was important and valuable in that role. And so we valued internal ability, and we made sure that those pathways were as clear and as obvious to people so that if they wanted to make moves, they understood, okay, to get over there, this is what I need to do. And so we encouraged and we facilitated those kinds of moves. And not every organization has the structure and framework and the processes to do that.
Okay. So speaking about the organizations and your experience with HR, what would you fix in the space that would make it easier for job seekers, recruiters, and hiring managers?
So like big question, what would I change in the space?
Or if there's one thing that you would change in the space that is specific to specific groups. So you can go big if it's one big thing, and you can go, into the job seekers, the recruiters, the hiring managers, people that are in the ecosystem that may have some specific problems, right? And like for example, hiring managers putting out, at least this was what I hear, putting out jobs that aren't real, or so yeah. Just give me your experience and what would you fix?
Well, that's irksome. Don't waste anybody's time with that, right? Finding a job, filling a job is like dating, right? But the stakes are a little bit higher because we know that a bad hire costs everybody time and pain. And not that
Yeah.
romantic dating isn't like that too, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's driven by just transparency, right? We
Mm.
make people go through 7 or 8 interviews. We don't exactly know what it is they're looking for. We don't get any feedback along the way. So we can really just go on our instinct. Or maybe if we're lucky enough, we know someone who works there who can give us the inside line. For those of us who don't have that network, right, it is as much a game of chance as it is about whether or not you're truly qualified. It is about, I got along with that person, the vibes are good, we went to the same school. So we perpetuate a little bit of the just like me syndrome, which doesn't help get diversity of thought, of experience, not just of gender, race, and color, which we know gets better results, better productivity when you have, right, people who think differently. So we try to make our hiring processes as transparent as possible in terms of how much we're going to pay. These are the key skills. And then when you come in, we ask you specifically about those skills, about your experiences. And we try to glean that from other things that we might see about you in your LinkedIn profile, or if you're published, we read those. And then, when we finally make decision, we try, in what we've done recently at Chronicle of Philanthropy is we actually now try and use some case studies, some real life examples so we can see you at work. I would like even to move to where people get the questions ahead of time so that they can
Mm,
think about it and they can prepare and bring their best responses,
that's
because
different.
work is very rarely like you get the assignment on the fly, you have to deliver it, and it has to be perfect, right? You usually have a conversation, you get to iterate. Like that's much more like on the job than an interview is. And so everything about an interview is just so contrived that the more we can make it clear and natural and organic, the better the process is.
Your ideas are so fresh. Are you taking these ideas to where you're being the HR lead, the chief human resource officer, or are you running into resistance in these ideas?
So I am very fortunate that currently at the Chronicle of Philanthropy, the CEO and the leadership team are really open-minded. I mean, I think I have worked in some organizations where it's been a little bit like pushing a boulder up the hill, and this is not. Their ground is so fertile. We really encourage open conversations. So I'm feeling good about my ability to bring impact and drive value.
Hey, I just wanted to take a quick break to say thank you for tuning into the Vision to Reality podcast. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to level up your business or career, I've got some great resources for you. To turn your business vision into reality, my book, Vision to Reality, Start Working, Start Living, is available now and filled with strategies to help you bring your goals to life. Plus, the companion Vision to Reality digital workbook is the perfect tool to guide you step by step through the process. You can grab both at curtisljenkins.com. And if you're preparing for your next job search, check out my book, The Only Job Search Book You Will Ever Need. This book uses proven marketing strategies that have been used for over 60 years to help you rise above competition to land your dream job. You can grab your copy at curtisljenkins.com. And I have great news. This book will be updated with a new version that includes recent impacts on the job search process, such as remote work, AI, government policy changes, and much more. Thanks again for listening. Now let's get back to the conversation. That's amazing. I mean, it's very attractive to me, right? In terms of these ideas that you have. I would have never thought, hey, let's give a candidate the questions up front. Now, what I have done when I work with recruiters is I've sent them sort of a list of values that the organization has, some pre-screening type questions so that the candidate can get an overview, especially of the culture, right? So I've done it like that, but I've never looked at it like the entire organization sort of using that as part of their practice. So good for you. And anybody that gets that opportunity to come to your organization, I think that's amazing.
Well, in full disclosure, we haven't implemented that bit yet, Curtis,
Yeah.
but we have implemented the real life case study so that people can feel
Yeah.
like what it's like to be on the job. The other advantage of providing the questions ahead of time is it's really good for people who are neurodivergent, right? And it really gives them a chance to study and prepare, and it equals the playing field, right? We're not
Yeah.
giving them the answers, and we're
Right.
just giving them a little extra time. So that's another reason why I like that approach. So it's definitely something I'm working toward.
Neurodivergent. Explain.
So people, for example, who are on the autism spectrum,
Got it.
who just process information differently and perhaps can't speak on the fly as well as other people. So just gives them a chance to perform.
No, I like that. And there's also a group that I like that for because I often talk to job seekers who are job seekers not by their choice. They've worked with a company for 30 years, 20
Wow.
years, 10 years, and they're not in the practice of seeking a job. So the hardest thing first is the resume, but then there's the interview. And I think that it helps them as well because this is new frontier with a landscape that has changed. And if you can imagine somebody that maybe got their job from an internship and then got the job, worked for 20 years, and now is faced with having to do all the things that we talk about to find a job. So I really think it helps several groups of people that just aren't practiced in that space.
Yeah, that's right. It's a great point.
Speaking of helping people, you came up with a couple examples, the person that became a director, and I forget the previous example. What's the one example of a person that you helped that hits really deep for you that when you helped them and the journey that you took together, it really defined who you are and what you have to offer and maybe even taught you a lesson?
Wow, that's a big one, Curtis. I I don't have well, I have one example, but I had already resigned from Harvard Business Publishing. And I was taking the elevator down at the end of the day, and I happened to share the elevator with someone. And she says to me, "You changed my life."
Mm.
And I was like, "What? What?" Like, I was completely gobsmacked. And as it turns out, she was a beneficiary of a mentoring program that I had set up. And I paired her with someone that they just got along really, really well. And I know that I spent a lot of time making those matches. That I had every person, write a bio about them. I had the managers write a little bit about them. And it was a very painstaking process. Now I know that there's AI and tools that can do that, but I wanted to really do it the old school way.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding was that all the pairings actually went really well. But this one was apparently so impactful that she literally said that it changed her life. And I didn't appreciate in the moment that this program, I mean, we all know that mentors are important, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I appreciated the depth to which it could really help someone see the world differently, see themselves differently, and
Mm-hmm.
connect with someone else in such a way that it could change the trajectory of how they make decisions about their life.
Mm-hmm.
And to have been able to have played a part in that was deeply, deeply satisfying. And to know that I made a mark on that person in that way, I certainly didn't do it for the kudos. So that was just really extra special. I like to think that, all the work that I do is at the very least making things a little bit better. I'm not looking for life changing experiences every single time, but if I can make their bit of time when they're at work a little bit better, that's good for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That is really good because I'm over here feeling that. And I think about there's a couple of thoughts that came to my mind. The first one is, do you ever reflect on the potential impact that you may have had on this world just by what you do? And before you answer, because we don't often get that person that tells us that. It's almost like customer service, right? Most of the calls are about what went wrong, not what went right. But have you ever just sat back and just reflected, what I do makes a difference in this world?
I mean, that sounds like that would be such an exercise in my ego. So no, but I will enjoy the moments when someone tells me, hey, good job. And I'll tell you, Curtis, hasn't always been easy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my early wiring is about humility and modesty. And so I would deflect anytime someone would say, oh, good job. I'd be like, oh no, but Curtis helped. Right. Like, oh, it was a team effort, or it wasn't that much. Right. Like, and I have learned to sort of enjoy those moments
Yeah.
because they're gifts that people are giving me. And essentially when I swap them away, it's a rejection of that gift. And I never want to do that. So I've learned to say thank you. I've learned to, sort of tuck those away because there are still plenty of moments of imposter syndrome. And so it's nice to be able to call those back to memory and say, you know what, you're not that bad at what you do. In fact, there are days when you're really good. And so that's probably about as close as I get to what you're asking, Curtis.
Yeah, yeah. I asked that question because recently, so I do yoga 3 times a week, and my yogi actually asked me that question, and I said, "I cannot even come close to quantifying the magnitude because there's what I do from my heart." But I mean, even this podcast, right? So you and I will be sharing this to the world, and we don't know. We don't know if somebody's I mean, we might get, say, like likes and maybe even some comments, good and bad, but we just won't know. And so it's just hard to know. It's just, you just kind of do what you do and be grateful for the opportunity to be who you are. Right. So I was just wondering, I was curious because I was asked that question if you ever sat back and thought about that. You talked about the humility. You talked about, growing up in your wiring. Tell me more about the wiring that you had to overcome and what's still with you. Like you talked about the imposter syndrome. Why do you think it's still with you? And what are some of the tools, techniques, or tricks that you use to even overcome your own wiring?
So my wiring is, children of immigrants. Again, the whole model minority myth, right? I mean, you excel not just for yourself, but because it's a credit or discredit to your family. So you have to work hard to make sure that they're proud of you. But those standards can sometimes be impossibly high to me. So
Mm,
it's not always healthy to
mm,
constantly push for the 100 when sometimes an 85 is damn good. And so failure has always been really hard for me to take.
mm,
And so learning to accept that everybody fails and that sometimes it's the failure where you grow the most. And, that's definitely a perspective that you only get when you're older and wiser and more mature. And certainly I think when I became a parent, I appreciated that pushing them always to excellence was not healthy for good or for them or for me.
mhm,
So my children definitely helped me rewire. I give them a lot of credit. One of the things I used to say to them when they were little, because they were pretty precocious kids, they're now 20 and 26, is, especially when they get sassy with me, I'd be like, you know what? I fully expect one day you will be smarter than me. Today is not that day. And there are flashes of brilliance now, Curtis,
yeah,
where they
yeah,
will soon be overtaking me. And so, just by virtue of being with them and appreciating that I can learn from them is changing my wiring. Um, so, okay, so I learned that I can't be the top of the class all the time. I learned that failure is good, but then I enjoy some successes, right? I do a really good job. I get a really big job, but there are times when you just wonder if it was luck, right? Or was it because someone gave you a lift? Am I
mm,
here because I really deserve to be here? And I've talked with lots of other women in particular who definitely experience that. And I suspect that there are men who do that too,
yes.
but perhaps aren't as forthcoming about that. And I think it would be good for us to destigmatize the feeling of imposter syndrome because I think it would free us all to be a little bit more authentic, a little bit more vulnerable, and not have to be on our A game all the time because that is just dang exhausting.
Hmm,
Uh,
hmm.
So as I'm, working part-time, part of this rewiring is helping me appreciate that there are other ways that I can be good to myself, that I can help others. And so that in and of itself, just running at a different speed has helped me to rewire.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. I can. So having to overcome all of that, and I talk about vision to reality all the time. I want you to tell me, what vision did you have that you made real? And then I want to know, what vision do you currently have that you're working on?
I wanted a happy and stable marriage. I wanted well-adjusted children. I wanted health and a little bit of wealth in my life.
Mhm.
And I have all those things. Some of it by luck, some of it by privilege, some of it by really hard work. So what am I painting for myself in the future? One of the things I really admire about my husband is he's one of
Mhm.
the few people I know, maybe the only person I know, who actually knows what contentment means and
Mm.
has it. He's done striving. He doesn't need the next thing. He's so happy where he is, which is different than complacency or inertia. It is not
Right.
this, but it is. So Professor Arthur Brooks at Harvard Business School teaches about happiness.
Mhm.
And he says one of the things to do is you have your wants and your needs. And our
Uh-huh.
wants always just, we want that, we want this, we want that. And it's hard to manage that. It's hard to want less. But what we actually need to be working on is the denominator and just need less. So your wants can be as big as you like, you can daydream all you want. But when you recognize what it is you actually need, that's a pretty small number. And that makes the whole fraction much more manageable. So what do I need? I need friends, I need social connection, I need to have purpose in my life, I need to live healthily. And so that's the vision that I have for myself. And I'm probably doing the worst at living healthily. I love that you're doing yoga 3 days a week. I have to do more of that. I love a good burger. So I just got to find a way to negate that.
Listen, it's so funny that you said that. I'm having a burger tonight
Ah,
because it's Friday night, and that's when I get to express myself.
I love that. I love that for you. All right, good, good.
All right. So your kids are already working. So I'm going to say maybe people their age, people or anyone actually, somebody that's looking to level up their career, right? Putting your HR hat back on. And if you had to give them steps, what would those steps be, or what would that advice be when they want to level up in their career?
Mm. So something that I used to hear a lot and still hear a lot of is that, if you love what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life. And I'm not actually sure that's true. I think the question that anybody at any stage of their career should be asking is, what are you good at? Because then you can bring impact, you can help others. And then I think out of that, you will feel good about what you're doing. You will then
Mhm.
enjoy it. But what are you good at? Right. So, I want to be a movie star. I'm not good at that. Right. I would love to be. Right. That seems like fun, celebrity and movies and that whole life, but I'm not good at that. Right. But I'm
Yeah.
good at HR. I'm good at helping other people through the lens of this profession. And so I have come to love it. So I think, the exercise is, what are you good at? And actually with ChatGPT, it's really easy. Type in all your interests, all your strengths, things you don't like to do, and it will actually spit out to you a pretty good list of professions that you might want to consider. It's an easy tool to do that. Yeah.
Okay. I struggle with that. I told you about that with the project management thing.
Mm.
And actually, that's what helped me when I talked about what am I good at? Because I was like, okay, to be a CEO, I got to learn finance, I got to learn sales, or one of these things, right? And at one point, I wanted to be a CFO. Wasn't good at it, right? I would do some crazy things, right? I would stalk. I remember stalking the CFO of Bell Atlantic, and he would smoke a cigarette every day at 3 p.m. And this was younger in my career. So I knew that he always stood outside by himself, smoked a cigarette. Well, in addition to understanding I wasn't good at it, I was like, I don't want that job if this is what I have to do every
If that's what
day.
it looks like, yeah, I don't need it.
And I talked to him, and he was really nice about, if you want to do it, yeah, sure, go ahead and grow into it. But what he wasn't saying is what scared me, right? He was just like out there like, oh my goodness. I had to say, well, what am I good at? And I kept coming back to, I'm really good at bringing vision to reality, right? Taking a project, what somebody thinks about, and making it real and loving what you have to do in terms of working with people and organizing and stuff like that. And I kept, but again, humility, pushing myself down, but that doesn't get any of the limelight. That doesn't get you to the C-suite. But then I realized it's important work. And it's work that everybody does, right? If you plan a wedding, that's a project. If you plan an event, that's a project. So it took me a while to be able to accept that what I was doing was good enough and that I could make it the best career that I can make it by taking something that I'm good at and building upon that. So I'm trying to get to people earlier in life, which is why I asked that question, so that they can start that self-examination sooner than later, right? Because I wouldn't mind adding another 10, 20 years to that revelation.
Yeah, that's right. Because how many unhappy CEOs do you know? I know a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, what's a question as we were preparing to come together and talk? What's a question that I didn't ask you that you would like to share the answer to?
What do you like on your burger?
Oh, that was a question. What do you like on your burger? Okay,
No, that's a real.
bacon,
I take my food very
bacon,
seriously, Curtis.
bacon, bacon, cheese,
Cheese.
and if it's pepper jack cheese with a little bite to it, I like that, or maybe even some feta.
Ooh, okay.
Uh, mushrooms and fried onions.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. I like caramelized, like grilled onions,
Yes,
but
yes, yes.
I'm almost there, and a milkshake on the side. If we're gonna do it, I'm gonna do it.
Unfortunately, I can't do the milkshake, but okay.
I'll have it for you. It's all good.
Okay. Well, listen, I got to tell you that this was such a treat to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for
I
having me.
love your accomplishments. I see you working with Harvard Business Review, which I read avidly because I'm a manager and a leader and a strategist. Fast Company, I don't read as much, but I think that you would tell me that I should, especially that you're a contributor to it. And I see you work with CNBC. You're a great speaker. Like you got all these great accolades, and thank you for sharing your time and talent with us and those nuggets. I would call your treasures as well. Is there anything that's happening in the future that we should be watching out for, or how can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So I'm the only Angela Cheng-Cimini on LinkedIn. And if any of your listeners say, hey, I heard you riff with Curtis on Vision to Reality, I'd be happy to connect.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet.
And listen, we'll put your information into the show notes so people can reach out to you. And a big thank you to everybody that's joining us for another episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. Until next time, onward and upward. Thank you. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. A huge thank you to today's guests. You can find all of their contact information in any resources mentioned in the show notes below. Also, can you do me a big favor? If you found today's conversation valuable, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment, and a review, and share it with a friend or colleague who could benefit from the information shared today. And remember, vision without action is just a dream. Let's turn those big ideas into reality. I'll see you in the next episode.